Hello, and welcome to Notes from the Conservatory, a podcast from the Bob Cole Conservatory of Music here at California State University, Long Beach. This podcast is a chronicle of conversations and interviews with our faculty, students, and guest artists. I'm your host, Richard Cooper. Today, we're continuing with our Stranded series, where I ask my guest what 3 pieces of music they would take with them to a deserted island. For this episode, I'll be talking to Dr. Jermie Arnold, who is currently the director of the conservatory. Dr. Arnold started here in 2012 as the associate band director, and in 2022, he became the principal conductor of the Wind Symphony, also teaching classes in conducting, wind band literature, and music education. Here is my conversation with Dr. Jermie Arnold. All right, we're ready to go. So let's start. First of all, I always like to start with your origin story, musical origin story. Like, how did you get into music and your history and like that?
I started playing the trumpet in 4th grade at Pendleton Elementary School, which is in Buena Park, just right around the corner, right by Knott's Berry Farm. I remember going with my mom and my grandmother, sitting in the back of the big brown station wagon, no seatbelts, to the music store and getting my trumpet. And of course, I got in the back of the car after we were leaving the music and just opened it up, put it together, and started making noise in the car. So that was my first noise making, I guess. And over time, I kind of fell in love with it. I continued playing through elementary school, played in middle school, had a really incredible middle school band director, Mark Youngerman, who still comes to my concerts today, who was super supportive and encouraging me to keep doing this thing. And I continued playing in high school, and I had my band director there, again, really supportive of me. His name's George Goulet, and he comes to the concert still, which is pretty awesome. So I had a lot of support at school, and then my family, was really supportive as well. So I kept playing. Funny enough, when it was time to go to college, I had kind of manufactured in my mind that, you can't make money doing music, so I'm going to go do something else. So I applied at Cal Poly Pomona as a landscape architect major. And that was my major for the first quarter, and then I kind of took some time off for a couple of years, and during that time off I realized I loved music and I loved teaching, and that's what I should do. So I came back and then changed my major to music education, and eventually went to Brigham Young University and did my undergraduate there in music ed. When I got there, it was about 350 students. When I left, it was just about 500 students, just in the music program. And just in the band program, that orchestra, we had a different teacher. So it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, cut my teeth there. I also did my master's while I was there. And then went off, did my doctorate at George Mason University, and that eventually brought me here. So my bachelor's degree and my master's degree are in music education, and then my doctorate's in conducting.
So when you wanted to be a teacher early on, were you ever considering being like an orchestral trumpet player?
No, I think from the beginning I wanted to be a teacher. I don't know why that is. You would think, especially as trumpet players go, we all want to be principal player and whatever. But even I guess at a young age, I saw the impact that my teachers had on me. And I was always kind of in leadership roles, so I was drum major in high school and middle school, and so it kind of put me in that instructional role right from the beginning, and I really liked it. I also liked the conducting thing too, but at the time I didn't realize, you could be a conductor, So music education seemed the right path.
And then when you were really coming up in music, were you interested in specifically orchestral music, or were you, as a trumpet player, did you listen to any jazz?
Yeah, so I did play in jazz band. I listened to jazz. I was never really a great improviser, so that kind of scared me away from it. But I played in the high school jazz band. We didn't have an orchestra at my high school. In fact, it wasn't until after I came back years later that they have orchestra there now. So I didn't really have that connection or opportunity. So I really saw music through the wind band side of things and the marching band side of things, and certainly, the jazz band side of things, but that was pretty limited.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get to it. If you were to go to a desert island, what 3 pieces of music would you take with you?
I think one of my favorite pieces, and this doesn't really change that much, is really Beethoven 9. Pretty influential work as far as symphony orchestras go, and the symphony, and what Beethoven was able to do really stretched the medium quite a bit. I've always loved Beethoven. I've been fascinated by Beethoven for a long time just because of the way he's able to take a small motive or a small compositional fragment and then turn it into an entire symphony. Like the Fifth Symphony is such a great example of that, right? You have a couple of notes that ends up being 45 minutes. And Symphony Number 9, all the different techniques that he uses with the Turkish percussion instruments and the new kind of French horn writing that's happening. And then, of course, you have this big vocal thing that comes out of nowhere and the soloist. It's just amazing. I mean, this was a pretty big risk, putting this giant choir out there with soloists in the end of a symphony. Nobody had ever done that before. On top of that, the message of the lyrics is joyful and brotherhood and all of those things. So I connect with that. I guess every time I hear it, I get excited. And it doesn't matter who's conducting or who's playing it. You know, it's a piece of music that I deeply connect with. Not to mention the state of his health when he was writing all of that. I had a friend that was just in Europe, and he posted a picture about one of Beethoven's pianos that had this big giant device connected to it so that Beethoven could feel the vibrations of the music as he was composing it. In that circumstance, to come up with something like the Ninth Symphony, I mean, pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So there's that one. And then I guess because I'm a band person, I have to pick a band piece. And there's a lot. So my favorite today probably would be Lincolnshire Posy. And this is Percy Granger, 1937. And Granger takes different folk tunes from individuals that he went and heard and then wrote them down and then transcribed them and composed them into this piece of posies or flowers or movements for the wind band. And the textures that he's able to use harmonically are so interesting, and for it to be so early too. 1937 for orchestra is like hundreds of years have gone by, but for band, that's really the beginning of band music as we know it.
I had never thought about the origins of band music. Where did that?
Well, it started. If you go way back, you start talking about military bands. These French military groups were made up of reed instruments and percussion, and really the medium is just in military. They serve a military purpose, fife and drums to tell the soldiers to charge or retreat. The size of the band begins to kind of increase, and you see Holst writing for military band. The Holst first suite was 1903 for what might be kind of the modern wind band instrumentation, although not quite. But yeah, when it came to Percy Granger, he's starting to really expand. And he was a composer that was really looking at the wind band as a way to express his medium because of the different textures and colors that he could get with the wind instruments that aren't readily available with the orchestra. You don't have saxophones, every day in the orchestra, or euphoniums. And so he was able to kind of exploit those colors in this really awesome way. And it's become one of the pivotal works in the wind band repertoire. So
something I learned about Percy Granger is he was a big advocate of early electronic music.
Yeah, so he had this cool synthesizer thing that he was kind of experimenting with, and then he also had, what was it called? The Harmony Machine. They have it still actually in Australia. There's the Percy Granger Museum, and it's this big instrument that has these big scrolls. It's like a big giant player piano thing, where there's slots in the paper where these pins move kind of up and down as the paper scrolls across, and as they move up and down, it changes the tonality of the sounds that he's creating. And you hear that actually in Lincolnshire Posy as these chromaticisms ebb and flow through the tonal harmony, and then underneath he has these colors that are really mixing, and you can kind of hear that machine that he put together to experiment with those sounds. And Percy Granger was a very interesting person, so he was always experimenting with sounds, and I think again that's one of the reasons why he wrote so many things for the wind band, because he had so many different colors and textures that he could play with. Okay,
what about your third one?
My third one actually is a hymn that I've fallen in love with, and there's actually a band arrangement of it as well. It's the hymn, It Is Well With My Soul. This is a hymn, the text was originally written by Horatio Spafford, 1873. So this was a gentleman who had a pretty poor lot in life. His business and family were affected by the Great Fire of Chicago, lost just about everything. in the midst of trying to recover from that, decides to send his family to Europe to go support a minister over there that's doing some proselytizing. So he sends his wife and daughters on a ship across the Atlantic, and he receives a telegram that indicates that the ship was hit by another ship, and the telegram from his wife says, "Saved alone." And so Horatio lost his daughters in that tragic accident, and so he quickly boarded another ship to go be with his wife, and upon arriving at the approximate location on the Atlantic where the accident happened, the ship's captain told him, and then he wrote the text to this hymn. And the chorus is pretty simple, but it is well with my soul. And so he talks about, in the midst of tragedy, his belief that he'll be with his family again is stronger than that tragedy, and that it's going to be, in the end, it's going to be okay. And I think for me, I connect with that because, life is hard, and there's always difficulty and struggle, but at the end of the day, it's going to be okay, and it's worth the effort. It's worth the time to repair relationships or make things better, and it's going to be well with my soul, and it's going to be well with everybody's. And I think if I were on a desert island, it's probably because something went wrong. And so I'm going to need some comfort, and I think, that would really bring me some comfort. It's a beautiful hymn that just has such a powerful message.
Do you remember when you first heard it?
I think I heard it as the band arrangement called on the arrangement's called On a Hymn Song of Philip Bliss, because Philip Bliss is the one who wrote the music, and I just loved the tune, and so I kind of looked into where did this come from, and then I read the lyric and then the story behind it, and then went and kind of heard what the actual hymn was, and I think ever since then, there'll be middle schools and high schools that come in here and come to the PCCM, or I'll go work with them, and very often they'll play this arrangement because it's very approachable for young ensembles, and I'll hear them kind of like playing it pretty mechanically, and then to be able to ask them, do you have any idea what this tune is, or what it came from, or where it came from, and then to be able to share with them, it is well with my soul. It transforms how they approach the music and how they're able to express it.
So do you play trumpet at all anymore?
During COVID, I played a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I during COVID, I was like, I'm going to get this thing out again and try to keep up with Ryan Dark. Of course, that didn't work, but Ryan and I would text all the time, and he was super encouraging. I said I play a lot. I would get out my instrument and, go through the Arbin studies and play some fun stuff and do some duets and things like that. And then over the last couple of years, I haven't played very much. In fact, the other day, I saw my instrument sitting there, it was looking at me like, you need to play me. You have abandoned me, But the wind band and conducting has really become my instrument. And do I miss playing trumpet? Yes, I do. Until I put it on my face, try to sit down next to our students and keep up with them. I'm like, okay, this was fun one time, But I really love being in front of an ensemble and collaborating with them through the music making process. And I just have such a joy with making that connection with the students and producing something that's beautiful.
All right, well, finish up. What's your current projects? What are you working on? What's coming up?
We just had our first concert of the semester with the Wind Symphony, which was super great. This next concert cycle, we have a piece that we're going to do called And the Mountains Rising Nowhere by Schwantner. This is another one of those kind of seminal works in the wind band literature. It's all graphic notation for the students and for the conductor. Much of it is aleatoric. It's a piece that really is about texture and color and less about melody. And I'm excited to put it together because it's something that most of our students will have never done before. We've done it here at the university a couple of times, but it's definitely going to be challenging for them. I mean, there are definitely some challenging technical aspects to it, but it's much more intellectually deep You have to be serious about it, because it might be easy to look at that and go, oh, he just wants me to go blah, 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 and then it's that, haha, that's funny. But in fact, once it's all together, like that, whatever you do makes a huge difference on the color and the texture that Schwantner's trying to portray. So that's kind of our big project. We're also going to be premiering a transcription of a piece called Yes, Virginia, There Is a Santa Claus. And we'll feature actually Associate Dean Anthony Burns, who will be doing a narration, and then an 8-year-old girl who also will participate. We're premiering the band transcription, the original version, which was written by Vincent Oppido. He wrote for the London Symphony Orchestra, and they recorded it in Abbey Road this last year. And so Vinny's a friend, so I reached out to him and said, I'd love to do a band version of that. He said, great. So he did it, sent it to me the other day. So that'll be on this next concert as well. So it'll be fun to work with a new composer and some newer music that the students haven't really grappled with, like graphic notation. So it's going to be fun. We're also going to do a piece by Mark Campbell called Yosemite Autumn, which I did with Mark. He was one of my teachers at George Mason. I did that when I was there with him, but the Wind Symphony last year went to Washington, D.C. We got to work with Mark, the Wind Symphony did, and our current principal clarinet is Erin Sersel, and Erin, after the clinic was over with Mark, she went up to Mark and started talking to him. And I overheard the conversation, and she said that she had played Yosemite Autumn in high school, and that piece was one of the reasons that inspired her to go into music. And I had forgotten about that until I decided to program this piece. So it's going to be kind of fun to see Erin play that piece again now that she is following her dream, and that piece has that connection to her.
All right. Well, this was great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This was fun and nerve-wracking, too.
All right.
This has been Notes from the Conservatory from the Bob Cole Conservatory of Music here at California State University, Long Beach. Thanks for listening.